Sunlight streamed through the windows of the Meadowbrook retirement home, painting long, silent stripes on the polished floor. In a corner, nestled in an armchair worn smooth by time, sat Arthur. His eyes, faded blue and filled with a lifetime of memories, stared out the window. He longed for something more, a spark to ignite the embers of his soul. One Tuesday, as Arthur was finishing his breakfast of lukewarm oatmeal, a flicker of colour caught his eye. A letter, addressed to him in elegant cursive, lay on the tray next to his untouched prune juice. His fingers, gnarled with age, trembled slightly as he picked up the envelope. Who could be writing to him? "My dearest Arthur," the letter began. Arthur paused, his brow furrowing. The letter described a small bakery, the aroma of fresh bread, and a young woman with laughter as bright as sunbeams. Arthur's breath caught in his chest. Who was this woman? And what was her connection to him? The letter described the baker, a kind man with calloused hands and a warm smile. Arthur's heart ached with a dull ache he couldn't place. As he turned the page, he noticed a small, faded photograph tucked inside. It was a picture of a young woman, her eyes sparkling with laughter. Arthur's hand trembled as he reached out to touch the woman's face. The letter ended abruptly, leaving Arthur with more questions than answers. He felt a growing sense of urgency, a need to unravel the mystery and piece together the fragments of his forgotten life. He would find out who was writing to him. The first letter, he realized, was just the beginning. The next morning, Arthur awoke with a knot of anticipation in his stomach. Days crawled by, each one an eternity. Then, one morning, a second letter arrived. This time, the familiar creamy envelope lay beside a single red rose on his breakfast tray. Arthur's heart skipped a beat. "This time, Arthur," the letter began, "I write to you of a train journey." Arthur leaned back in his chair, his mind conjuring images of steam and steel, the rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks. The letter described rolling hills and fields of sunflowers, their faces turned towards the sun. The air, the writer said, was thick with the scent of coal smoke and anticipation. The young man on the train, the letter explained, was travelling to a new life, leaving behind everything he had ever known. He carried with him a small suitcase filled with dreams and a heart heavy with unspoken goodbyes. Arthur reread the passage, his brow furrowed in thought. He too had taken a train journey once, long ago. The third letter arrived a week later. It spoke of a promise made under a sky ablaze with stars, two figures silhouetted against the vastness of the universe. The letter hinted at a love deep and abiding, a love that transcended time and circumstance. Arthur's breath hitched. The woman in the photograph, he knew her. The man in the photo, it was him. Memories like fragments of a shattered mirror flashed before his eyes. The letters, he realized, were more than just stories. They were pieces of his past, carefully curated and sent to him by someone who knew his secrets. Days turned into weeks, each one filled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He felt like a man standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure whether he should step back or take the leap into the unknown. The nurses at Meadowbrook noticed the change in Arthur. He was more engaged, more alive. He wrote down every detail he could remember from the letters, every name, every place. One afternoon, as he was organizing his belongings, he stumbled upon a small wooden box tucked away in the back of his drawer. Inside, nestled among faded love letters and yellowed photographs, lay a small, leather-bound diary. Could this be the key to unlocking the mystery? As he reached for the diary, a wave of dizziness washed over him. He sank back into his chair, his chest constricting with a familiar ache. When he opened his eyes again, a figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. Arthur's breath caught in his throat. The face that greeted him was both familiar and strange, a mirror reflecting a past he thought he'd lost forever. The figure moved closer, and Arthur's heart pounded with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Clara!" Arthur whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. A soft smile touched Clara's lips as she took his hand in hers. "It's me, Arthur," she said, her voice a low melody that soothed his troubled mind. Arthur's mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman standing before him with the faded memories swirling in his head. Clara's presence, after all these years, felt both surreal and inevitable, like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. Clara, sensing his confusion, squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I know you have questions, Arthur," she said softly. "But first, I think you should read this." She gestured towards the diary still clutched in his other hand. "Eleanor wanted you to have it." Arthur opened the diary. Eleanor's words, filled with love, laughter, and a touch of melancholy, washed over him. She wrote of Clara, her dearest friend, the one person who had always been there for her, through thick and thin. As Arthur read, the pieces of his past began to fall into place. He remembered Clara, her infectious laughter and her unwavering loyalty. Eleanor's diary entries revealed the truth about that time, a truth she had kept hidden from Arthur. The letters, Arthur realized, weren't just random stories. They were Clara's way of fulfilling her promise to Eleanor, her way of gently guiding him back to himself. Each letter had been carefully chosen, each detail meticulously crafted, to evoke a specific memory, a feeling, a moment in time. Arthur looked up at Clara, his eyes filled with understanding and gratitude. "It was you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were the one who wrote the letters." Clara nodded, her own eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Eleanor made me promise," she said softly. "She knew how much you loved her stories, how they had a way of transporting you to another time and place. She wanted you to have that, even after she was gone." Clara explained that she had chosen to remain anonymous, at least initially, because she wanted Arthur to find his own way back to the memories. She knew that simply telling him the truth wouldn't be enough. He needed to experience it, to feel it in his bones, to reclaim the parts of himself that he had lost. Arthur reached out and took Clara's hand, his grip firm and sure. He finally understood. The letters weren't just about the past, they were about healing, about finding hope and peace in the midst of loss. They were a testament to the enduring power of love, a love that transcended time and circumstance, a love that even death couldn't diminish. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, Arthur and Clara sat in comfortable silence, their shared history weaving a tapestry of unspoken understanding between them. The air was thick with emotion, but it was the bittersweet ache of healing. the quiet joy of rediscovering a part of himself he thought he'd lost forever. Clara, her promise to Eleanor fulfilled, rose to leave. "I should let you rest," she said, her voice filled with warmth. "But I'll come back tomorrow if you like. We have a lot to catch up on." Arthur smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "I'd like that very much, Clara," he said. And as he watched her go, he knew that he wasn't alone, not anymore. He had his memories, his love for Eleanor, and the unwavering friendship of the woman who had helped him find his way back to the light. The next morning, Arthur awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The fog that had clouded his mind had lifted, replaced by a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Eleanor's diary and Clara's visit had unlocked a torrent of memories he now embraced. He sat on his bed, sunlight streaming through, and let the memories wash over him. He recalled meeting Eleanor, her laughter like wind chimes, her eyes sparkling. He remembered their first kiss, her hand in his, her unwavering support. And Clara, a constant in his life, their childhood games, whispered secrets, and deep understanding. Clara, his rock, his confidant, the sister he never had. As memories flooded back, Arthur felt profound gratitude. He had spent years lost in grief, forgetting the richness of his life. He had a loving wife, a cherished friend, and a lifetime of precious experiences. But as Arthur delved deeper into his memories, he realized there were still gaps, missing pieces of the puzzle that left him feeling incomplete. There were periods of his life, particularly the years following Eleanor's passing, that remained shrouded in a haze of confusion and pain. He remembered the initial shock of her death, the overwhelming grief that had threatened to consume him. He recalled the blur of the funeral, the sympathetic faces of friends and family, their words of comfort washing over him like distant waves. But the details of the years that followed remained elusive, lost in a fog of emotional numbness. He tried to recall how he had coped, how he had navigated the world without Eleanor by his side. He vaguely remembered his children visiting, their faces etched with concern, their attempts to draw him out of his shell met with his own stoic silence. But the details, the emotions, the day-to-day realities of those years remained tantalizingly out of reach. Clara, sensing his struggle, reached out and took his hand, her touch a comforting anchor in the storm of his thoughts. "It's okay, Arthur," she said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "It's not unusual to have gaps in your memory, especially after a significant loss. Time has a way of blurring the edges of our pain, protecting us from what we're not ready to face." Arthur looked at Clara, his brow furrowed in thought. "I need to remember, Clara," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. Clara nodded, her gaze filled with compassion. "Then we'll figure it out together," she said, her voice firm and reassuring. And so began their journey into Arthur's past. They started with the letters, using them as a roadmap, each one a clue leading them closer to the heart of the mystery. They revisited the bakery from the first letter, its aroma of freshly baked bread stirring long dormant senses within Arthur. The baker greeted them with a warm smile. He vaguely remembered Arthur, a regular customer from many years ago. Arthur listened intently, picturing himself in that bakery, seeking refuge from his grief in the familiar comfort of routine. Their next stop was the train station. Arthur stood on the platform, the air thick with the scent of diesel and anticipation, and tried to recapture the feeling of that long-ago journey. The letter had spoken of a young man filled with a bittersweet cocktail of hope and fear, running towards something, but also away from something. Could that young man have been him? He closed his eyes, trying to picture the woman by his side, the woman from the photograph. He could see her face, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He could almost feel the warmth of her hand in his, the silent promise they had made to face the future together. But as Arthur strained to grasp the memory, a chilling thought crept into his mind. What if he hadn't been running towards something, but away from something? What if the grief he felt for Eleanor had driven him to make a choice he had buried deep within the recesses of his mind, a choice he was now terrified to confront? He shared his doubts with Clara as they sat in a quiet corner of the station cafe, sipping lukewarm coffee. What if I wasn't the man Eleanor thought I was? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. What if I did something unforgivable? Something that made me unworthy of her love? Clara listened patiently, her gaze steady and reassuring. When he was finished, she reached across the table and took his hand, her touch grounding him in the storm of his own making. "Arthur," she said softly, her voice filled with empathy, "we all make mistakes, especially in the face of grief. It doesn't make us bad people, just human." She reminded him of the man Eleanor described in her diary, a man of integrity, kindness, and unwavering love. She spoke of the way he had cared for Eleanor throughout her illness, the tenderness in his touch, the strength he had shown in the face of her suffering. "Eleanor knew your heart, Arthur," Clara said, her voice firm yet gentle. "She believed in you, even when you doubted yourself. And so do I." Her words, spoken with such conviction, sparked a flicker of hope within him. Could he allow himself to believe, to forgive himself for the mistakes of the past? Clara suggested they visit the cemetery, a place Arthur had avoided for years, the pain of Eleanor's absence too raw, too overwhelming. He hesitated, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and a strange sense of longing. But with Clara by his side, he found the courage to face his past, to finally confront the ghosts that haunted him. They stood before Eleanor's grave, the headstone a stark reminder of the finality of death. Arthur traced the engraved letters with his fingertips, his touch reverent, his heart heavy with sorrow. Memories came flooding back. He remembered the day Eleanor died, holding her hand, whispering words of love, the crushing weight of her absence, the train journey, the woman by his side, a pilgrimage to fulfill a promise, to visit places they dreamed of seeing together, to keep her memory alive. The woman on the train, his daughter offering comfort. Part 6, Act 5 ends. Arthur sank to his knees before Eleanor's grave, tears streaming down his face, a torrent of grief and relief washing over him. He had remembered, truly remembered, and in doing so, he had forgiven himself. The guilt and doubt that had haunted him for years dissipated like mist in the morning sun. Clara knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his back, her presence a silent testament to the enduring power of friendship. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She understood the storm of emotions raging within him, the bittersweet symphony of grief, love, and redemption. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the cemetery, Arthur shared his rediscovered memories with Clara. He spoke of the journey he had taken with his daughter, the laughter they had shared, the tears they had shed, the unspoken bond that had only deepened in the face of their shared loss. He spoke of the letters, how they had awakened something within him, a spark of curiosity, a flicker of hope, leading him back to himself, back to the love that had defined his life. He told Clara of the comfort he found in knowing that Eleanor, in her final days, had entrusted him to her care, knowing that she would guide him through the darkness. Leaving the cemetery, hand in hand with Clara, Arthur felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The world seemed sharper, the colours more vibrant. He was present in the moment, grateful for every breath. He returned to Meadowbrook a changed man. The shadows had dissipated, replaced by a quiet joy. He embraced life in the retirement home, finding solace in shared stories. He began writing again, his words flowing with ease. He wrote about his life, his love for Eleanor, the adventures with his daughter, the lessons he had learned. He wrote about the mysterious letters, the journey of self-discovery they had sparked, the healing power of truth and forgiveness. And in the quiet hours, when memories of Eleanor washed over him, he would take out her diary and reread her words, each sentence a precious gem, a reminder of the extraordinary love they had shared. He knew that even though she was gone, her spirit lived on, not just in his heart, but in the stories he told, the love he shared, the life he embraced.